Hi, I'm Aster, and on this channel we talk about all things magic. Today is a very special day, again, because we are going to talk about the form of magic that is the dearest to my heart, Brazilian magic, for I am Brazilian. I would like to start by saying that I am in no way an anthropologist or historian or anything of the sort, even though there's gonna be a lot of history in this video. I am just a person born and raised in Brazil who knows a thing or two about her own country's history and culture. That's all. And the purpose of this video is sharing information. As I say sometimes, I'm here to put Brazil on the map of the international magical community. When it comes to books, I get a lot of requests on TikTok to recommend books on Brazilian folk magic. By the way, if you don't follow me already, make sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram, and also to subscribe to the channel and get the little bell ringing so you will be notified about all future videos. But as I was saying, I do plan on making a video talking about books, but for today, the book that is going to be my source is this one. I'm sorry for the English speakers, I have no idea if this book is translated to English or not, like if there's a translation, I don't know, but it's a great book if you like history, and if you are just interested in Brazilian religions, Brazilian society, history, as I just said, this is the book that you want to read. Candomblé and Umbanda, Paths of Brazilian Devotion would be the translation of the title. This book is written by an anthropologist. I think it's the person responsible for the Department of Anthropology of the University of São Paulo. The author specializes in the Afro-Brazilian religion, so I really recommend this book to anyone who's interested in the topic. Now, let's get started. I also think it's important that I make very clear that I am not a member of the religions that I am going to talk about here in this video. And other than spread information, my purpose with this video is to give voice to those who couldn't speak in their time, my ancestors. I am very glad and honored to be able to do what they couldn't, and this video is first and foremost dedicated to them. I think that for the purposes of this video, it's important to define folk magic. I may be wrong. If I am, please correct me in the comment section below. But as I see it, folk magic are practices that vary depending on culture and time. But if we think about it, they're all kind of similar at the same time. But they are the little practices to solve day-to-day problems that the common people have. Basically, in a nutshell, that's folk magic. Of course, it goes deeper, it goes beyond that, but in a very short explanation, that's a definition or part of a definition that one could give to folk magic. It's the magic of the people, the magical practices that people would resort to solve their, let's say, mundane life problems. Brazilian folk magic is very much rooted in African-derived religions, the ones that are in the title of the book, Candomblé and Umbanda. And in this video, I'm gonna explain how all of that came to be. Get some popcorn, get a tea, get a coffee, and please bear with me because I think this is going to be a long one. We are going to start by talking about Brazil's ancient religions, and it's impossible to talk about that without talking about Brazilian history. I'm guessing that most of you don't really know much about it, so here we go. Brazil was colonized by Portugal in the year 1500. And by the way, that's why we speak Portuguese, not Spanish and not Brazilian. Okay? The Portuguese ships arrived bringing a lot of greed on board, but also their religion, Catholicism. And upon their arrival, a never-ending war against the natives began. Some specialists state that at the time, the indigenous population was around 5 million people, divided into several different tribes. Sadly, most of them were simply slaughtered by the Portuguese invaders. Entire native nations were completely wiped out of the land. The people who were not killed were taken as prisoners or as slaves, and of course, they were forced to convert to Catholicism. Nowadays, it's very difficult to reconstitute what the religions of the native people of Brazil used to be, because most of it was forever lost with the death of its practitioners. With the little information that could be saved, and considering the current practices of the few tribes that managed to survive all of that, we can only have a basic idea of what their religiosity used to be originally. What we do know is that their religions were polytheistic, and their cults venerated elements of nature, such as the sun, lightning, rain, rivers, and seas. The original Brazilian people have been persecuted and killed for more than 500 years, and still is to this very day. As I speak, the Yanomami tribe is in a horrible situation caused by mercury intoxication, which by its turn was a result of unauthorized gold mining in their reserve. They are dying. Once again, thanks to greed. The greed of the white man. Among the first businesses that were established in Brazil during that period, we had the sugarcane crops to make sugar. Enslaving the native people didn't really work that well. I hear that they didn't really accept to be enslaved, and often they killed themselves just to escape slavery. So the sugarcane crops were in dire need of workers. And Portugal, who was already very well versed in the trade of Africans as slaves, had no problem taking many, tons of them to Brazil to work on the sugarcane crops and in whatever other business that they had going. And this way, within the first decades of the 16th century, Brazil started to receive black Africans to feed with their blood and sweat, a plethora of economical activities. And that lasted from the 16th century up to the 19th century. But just like the Portuguese people, those enslaved Africans also took to Brazil their beliefs and their religions. So the African-derived religions in Brazil were born from the combination of 3 different belief systems: the Catholicism of the colonizer, the beliefs of the native people, and the religions of several different African ethnicities. Catholicism, of course, was the mandatory religion of that period, and practicing anything else was a huge risk. The Inquisition tribunals were not really established in Brazil, but they did pay visits. They persecuted white, black, and indigenous people alike under the accusations of performing sabbats and practicing witchcraft. Like anything that was not Catholicism was automatically witchcraft, and any gathering that included dancing and singing and were Sabbaths, okay? So, off to Portugal to be judged. So, considering that there was this pressure to be Catholic, what the Africans started to do was to disguise their deities with Catholic masks. They pretended to be worshipping Catholic saints or angels, but in reality, they created correspondences between those and the Orishas, which are the African deities. And according to this book here that I have mentioned earlier, the dominant classes, of course, at the same time that they wanted the Africans to be Catholic, they knew that wasn't really happening, but they pretended to not be noticing what the Africans were doing, that they were not 100% Catholic. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because they realized that allowing the Africans to maintain their native cults was actually advantageous for the white dominance. The white supremacy of the time feared that if they would forbid the Africans of keeping their cults, the slaves would unite against a common enemy and then would start making riots. Because as long as they were allowed to keep their own belief systems, they kept kind of divided amongst themselves because they came from several different tribes in Africa. So they didn't really believe exactly the same thing or did exactly the same things in the same way. So if they would be forbidden to keep those practices, then they would unite for the common good with a common goal against the oppressor. So that's why the African practices survived time, because to an extent they were convenient to the white dominant classes. It's actually a little bit complicated, a little bit difficult for us to put our finger on the history of those ancient religions, because they were basically oral traditions. There are no books, there are no records, there are no physical evidences of how things were. And also considering that they were the practices of people who lived very much marginalized lives, their beliefs suffered a lot of persecution and prohibition, and not to mention the prejudice that still exists in Brazilian culture. What we can find as old records of those religions are judgment files from the visits of the Inquisition to Brazil. And from more recent times, there are police files reporting invasions, like the police invaded temples to arrest the practitioners under the accusation of charlatanism. The struggle is real. Because if during slavery the African cults were kind of tolerated, after the end of slavery, which in Brazil was in 1888, everything that represented a black cultural manifestation was forbidden, was illegal. Capoeira, samba, and of course, their religions. So all of that combined, imagine all of that combined, indigenous influence, Catholic oppression and influence as well, different African tribes mixed up together. All of that combined resulted in regional differences all over the country. Now, Candomblé and Umbanda. Those are the religions that came from the black enslaved African and evolved over time with all of that mixture going on around them. And they exist. Today, if you go to Brazil, you will find temples, you will find those religions. Doesn't matter if it's a big city or a small town, you will find at least one temple. But are they witchcraft? No, they are religions. Brazilian folk magic comes from them, but they are two separate things. It's one thing if you just, for example, salt bath. They are very, very common Any person is free to take a salt bath. The other day I posted how to do it on my TikTok. Anyone can do it. But it comes from these religions. You don't need to be a member of the religion to take a salt bath. You don't need to be initiated. You don't need to go to the temple and ask for permission. No, if you know how to make a salt bath for yourself, you can just go ahead and make one. If you just want to light a candle for your guardian angel, that's also something that these religions kind of teach to people in need of some cleansing and protection. Anyone can do it. And that becomes part of the popular practices of every Brazilian person. You know, not every, that's a lot of people, but those little things, herbal or salt bath, lighting a candle to your guardian angel, among other little things, little spells, they are part of the popular practices and beliefs, part of Brazilian culture. And they do fit in what folk magic is. The concept of witchcraft, and by the way, the concept of the devil, they are European and they are Catholic. They do not come from Africa and they do not come from African-derived religions. If you check your history, you will realize that it was Catholicism that came up with witchcraft and the devil. It was not from any other pagan practice that existed before. The devil and witchcraft, they are not originally Brazilian ideas. They were taken to Brazil by the colonizer. No, this is one of the questions that I receive the most, if it's an open practice or not. And I really appreciate how attentive and respectful people are. They're very careful to not cross boundaries and be disrespectful. I think that's awesome. But no, it's not a closed practice. Nothing that I share on my TikTok is something that you cannot do. Okay, it's open for anyone to do, doesn't matter your origins, and it doesn't require initiation. On my TikTok, I don't share anything that would require you to be initiated in a religion. But if you want to work with the Orishas, which are the African deities, as well as other entities that are particular to the Afro-Brazilian religions, if you want to work with those, I do recommend you to look for a specialized temple to guide you through it. And even maybe becoming initiated. Because when it comes to these entities, to these deities, trust me, you do not want to mess up with them. Because they're gonna come for you. Oh, they will. So before inviting an Orisha to join you or any other entity that is part of a Brazilian cult, you gotta be sure of what you're doing. Are we clear? Good. And before deciding that initiation is the right choice for you, keep in mind that these religions are a very serious commitment. If you don't take it seriously, you're gonna get a lot of backlash from it. And I'm talking serious backlash. It can, if you don't take it seriously enough, it can basically disrupt your life, okay? You want to work with Orishas, you want to work with Afro-Brazilian entities, you want to be initiated, cool, go for it. But be sure of what you're doing and be sure that you can live up to the commitment, okay? I'm not talking weeks, I'm not talking months, I'm talking years, all right? But again, if you want to do anything, any spell that I teach on my TikTok, there's no commitment. You can just say your prayer, connect to your own deities from your own culture, like lighting a candle to your guardian angel. It's your guardian angel for God's sake. Like, you're not dealing with anything other than your own higher self, your own guardian angel. So you are free and welcome to do anything that I share on my TikTok. I'm gonna repeat that. But if you want to take steps further, look for guidance and think well before making that decision. Me, for example, I'm not initiated in those religions, and I do not plan on doing so. As a matter of fact, I relate much more to I think spiritualism, Allan Kardec. That thing is more up to my alley. But I want to know about this because it was the practice of my grandma, of my aunt, of my uncles. My mom used to take me to, just as visitors. My mom, she was never an active member like my grandma and my aunt were. But my mom took me to visit the practices when I was a kid. So these religions, they are also running in my blood. They are part of my family's history, and they are part of my country's history. So for me, it's important that I know about it. That's why I get books about it. I read them eagerly, and I like to know about it because even though I'm not a member of the religions, this is also part of who I am. And I am very happy to acquire knowledge about it and to share it with whomever might want to hear. So yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something from it. And I'm gonna see you in the next one. Make sure to subscribe, and remember, practice makes perfect. So let's get witching.